All right, that's great. And then Dan, we know can't make it, and I don't know about John Weston.
Because Bernie.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Bernie.
Hello, Bernie.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, Chris.
Bernie,
Turn it this way.
everyone here except for Dan Dewar, who popped in to tell us he can't make it because his device was dying, and John Weston, who I'm not sure if he's coming, but everyone else is here.
Okay. Julie, I didn't catch who the other person you said was not likely.
John
to-
Weston, I
John.
don't know if he's coming or not. He didn't respond to my email.
Okay. Jay, we said was going to be on a honeymoon, I believe.
Oh, and Jay,
Oh,
right.
right.
I was
That's
thinking
right.
there's someone
That's
I'm
right.
forgetting.
Yeah.
So, very good. So, do we have any participants from the public? Looks like we might have Tom O'Connor. Oh, no, sorry, that's, I was thinking of Tom, another Tom, sorry.
That's all right.
You look different.
I'm
it's
having a
okay.
hard time recognizing
Yeah.
everybody on Zoom that normally I see
Yeah.
their faces.
I don't have my mask on.
That's what
Yeah.
it is. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks like
I
Caitlin
can
is,
put it on.
And
Caitlin is
Caitlin is
taking
here
notes.
from, yeah, she's here from staff to do minutes tonight.
Okay.
So, hi, Caitlin.
Hello.
Hi, Caitlin.
as we get, if we get any public participants, we'll just try to announce those as they come in and give them an opportunity to talk. But in the first case, let's see, I just had my minutes up here. Now I'm just trying to get to them. So the first order, maybe we should just review the minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I did
You want to call to
get
order?
a call to order, please, at 7:02. Thank you. I have seen the minutes, gone through them pretty briefly, but they look in order to me. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a comment. The paragraph, the first paragraph on the second page where Ms. Delios explained that the town is working with the developer to correct the situation regarding the postmark overflow parking. And that it says once the developer has fixed the issue, overflow parking on Sanborn and Haven will be resolved. I think we need to put in there, their parking there is not the only issue. There's an apartment building there that doesn't have parking behind it that uses that street as overnight parking. So it's not going to get rid of the overnight parking there because the parking existed before postmark. So it goes all along Lower Sanborn and it goes up Upper Sanborn. So I think if we could modify that it's not going to get, it'll only resolve the overflow from postmark. It will not resolve the overnight parking on Sanborn.
So I guess the one question there, just from a, really technical standpoint is, did we discuss that though? These are minutes, not like we really were only talking about postmark.
Yeah, but I just want this sentence to say that the overflow parking from postmark will be resolved.
Gotcha.
Well,
Gotcha.
So
Well, yeah, and I think I would agree with you, Liz, that the minutes reflect what Jean said. But I do agree that, so it's not clear to me how we should revise these, except I think to add something.
I think Karen's clarification is valid. Just saying overflow parking from postmark will be resolved. I think that
Right.
happens. Yes.
I just wanted that clarified.
Well, it's not, I think that, and it's not clear that it will be resolved either. I mean, we don't really know if the residents, once they.
It is clear. They have enough
redone.
spaces for them, but it
but they
also is
may-
the minutes do reflect, now that we've said that, the minutes reflect what was said.
Yeah, but
Can you
it may,
see what I'm screen sharing and the edits I'm making?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Joy.
So I just revised that sentence. Is that sentence revision acceptable? It's right here where my cursor is.
We didn't discuss anything other than that. So we didn't discuss
No.
visitor parking. We didn't discuss anything that relates to any other parking issue other than overflow directly from the residents at postmark.
Right. And yes, Julie, that I like your revision. It looks good.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's
yeah,
my
I mean, And I would say that there is humans will do what humans do. They may reline the lot, but that doesn't mean people will use it as such. They might decide that they still like to park overnight outside the lot. I don't think that's something that we can, I think, I don't need to put it into the minutes, but, and any other comments on the minutes?
I'm good.
No, I'm good.
Good.
Me too.
Motion to accept the
I
minutes?
make a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
Any second?
Second.
Any- All in favor?
Aye.
I,
I see it unanimous.
Great, thank you.
Did everybody, thank you to Andrew and Kelly, and they're not obviously here, but Kelly Fitzsimmons and Catherine Fatherly, they were very helpful in, trying to summarize all of the survey data, including inputting the data into the system. I've gone through quite a lot of the individual comments, but they're quite numerous. And one thing that we tried to do, but we haven't had time, is to sort of categorize those comments in one form or another, and then bin them and statistically, summarize them according to some kind of categorization of comments. I have not done that. I don't know if anybody else had a chance. I think we talked a little bit about trying to do that before at our last meeting. Any comments on that or questions?
I kind of went, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
That's
go
all
ahead, Sarah.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I went through them fairly quickly after we got them till just now. And I just jotted down a few of the points that seemed to be recurring. I was just going to see, towards the end of the meeting, I guess we're supposed to be writing down getting somewhere with our final suggestions. And I was just going to share those then.
Yeah.
I
if
had
you'd like
this-
to.
Yeah, I had the same thing as well. So I guess we can share them now, right, Bernie?
I would say, yeah, maybe if we could take, try to keep our allocation to this maybe 10, 15 minutes and then try to summarize them.
Okay, I'm gonna go down, I'll go through my list pretty quickly then, and then see what everybody else can take a turn. It seemed to be that people thought that the 2-hour parking and shorter would be better to have behind the CVS lot, that having 4 hours there was really problematic. I think the CVS rear lot is the one that there were the most comments about, not being able to find parking and that people were parking there too long, even though the front, I've seen some of the same cars parked in the front when I'm running errands in the morning and then again at lunchtime and different times. But anyway, so that was the number one thing that came up to me, was that so many people agreed that there was a problem with the rear CVS lot. There wasn't as much about the Brandy Court lot, but I think probably that's because CVS is there and so many people are going to CVS for prescriptions and whatnot. It seemed most people, when they went downtown, were taking 2 stops. Still, mostly they come by car, which makes sense. We're kind of a suburb here. People were sort of acknowledged they would be up for taking a reasonable walk. That the daily reason to come downtown is because you live there, you work there, or you're commuting from there. The weekly reason was chores, food, and church. And monthly was town business, various services, and dining. The majority of the parking was during, the heaviest times to park are daytime. It's expected to increase more at night with more restaurants, more nightlife downtown. Everybody has pretty much figured out that there hasn't been any enforcement, which is really a big contributing factor to some of the parking problems. Like there's nobody ticketing. I didn't realize that until somebody had mentioned it. I think it was at our first meeting. So that seems to be one of the steps that needs to be taken, and sooner than later, because no matter what we come up with without enforcement, it won't really affect too much change. That there was a need for more bike infrastructure, that the construction vehicles taking up street spaces was a big problem. And I'm not clear on why we can't enforce. I guess it was that Chief Clark was saying you can give them tickets and their bosses just pay them because it's cheaper than paying like downtown parking fees or something. You guys might have a better memory of that, but I know going forward, I'm not sure what other towns do with construction vehicles in such a small downtown. Some people were saying that they'd be willing to walk more if the intersections weren't so dangerous crossing over Main Street. There was a very strong need for more handicap spots. And one person mentioned something I didn't think of, which was that the spots now assume that the handicapped person is the driver and that sometimes it's the passenger. So there needs to be enough room on the other side. Let's see. The most popular places to park being front and back of CVS, Main Street and Haven Street, but Main Street is a challenge because of having to get parallel park where people don't necessarily have a willingness to stop for you while you're trying to parallel park. And just the fact that there's a couple of one-way streets. So it gets frustrating when you go by the front of CVS and you go through the back of CVS or whatever, and you got to go around a large, circle to get back to find another spot. So I'm not sure what the answer to that is, and someone made a comment that the Reading Co-op was letting their employees use the town lot. I don't know if that's true, but I thought we should clarify that because I don't think it is. So, and that employers don't want to have the meters so much to hinder their customers, which I totally can see that, where some of these spots we talked about in the downtown area just being 30 minutes for people that are popping in and out of stores. I don't see that we would need a meter. Maybe we could just have signs or whatever. And I thought it was really, good that so many people were willing to leave their names and emails and even their phone numbers for follow-up. I think it shows that there's a lot of people willing to, that have an interest in this. Positively. That's all I got.
It's very helpful, Sarah. Really summarizes it well. Chris, did you have some comments? Was it you?
Yep. Thanks, Bernie. Yeah, I had a couple, some of the ones that Sarah mentioned overlap as well. So I didn't know about the Reading Co-op thing either that was mentioned on there, that apparently they park in a lot that I don't even know exists that they're mentioning. So somebody made this point to mention that. But yes, the number one issue that I didn't think that we had is a handicapped issue. The amount of comments that were on there that we don't have enough handicap spots I did not see that kind of statistic coming. And last night at the select board meeting, they mentioned during the census that Reading is about 30% of the senior population. So it kind of coincides with that. I'm not saying that all elderly people are handicapped, but it's I didn't think that number would have been that high either. The CVS parking lot was, the number one thing that everybody commented on, that it's either full or people are overstaying the time. To not charge for parking. That's obviously no one's ever going to say like, yes, let me pay for parking, but that was a bunch of people had that. A lot of people go to CVS in North Reading because they don't want to park at this CVS over here. We lose a lot of business, even the Empower Woburn thing. Someone made a comment that they wanted to try it out, but they couldn't get a spot and left after 10 minutes. So it's unfortunate to see that, but I mean, I think that would exist regardless of any scenario that we did. A lot of people wanted us not to push any of the parking out to the streets. I assume that they must live over there. A couple people mentioned that they do a lot of loops around, and that they're concerned with the way that the parking is now, that it's only going to get worse in the winter time when people are forced to end up parking somewhere and they can't do it overnight on the street, that the lots would be more full at that time. I don't moving on from that. And then the other thing that I saw a lot of time that I'm biased towards is mentioning doing either a parking garage or a second level thing behind CVS. And someone mentioned digging down, which I haven't even thought of. I thought the water tables in Reading were ridiculous, that we couldn't do some of that stuff. But someone brought that up also as an option of going down. I don't know what's under there, but I'm not paid to know what's under anything for the most part. So that's all I got. I think the resounding thing, though, is the handicap issue that apparently we have, that somebody's parking at Venetian Moon in that one spot and just leaving their car there all day, every single day. I don't know. I guess I'll check tomorrow and see if they're really there. So, but that's what I took away from briefly from that. So some does overlap with Sarah as well.
Any other comments? That's helpful, Chris.
There were some comments. Oh, sorry. Are we raising hands? Go ahead.
I don't know what we're doing for our. I was just going to say, I also was shocked by the number of responses referring to handicap. And I was also delighted at there were actually more responses than I expected of people saying, yes, there's enough parking. You just have to walk a little bit, because usually people who comment are people who have something negative to say. So it was actually heartening to see that actually quite a few people said, you know what, we're okay. People just have to walk. So I'm not saying, never mind, let's all just go home and cancel this meeting. But I am saying, like, not everybody thinks it's Armageddon downtown, and that was helpful perspective as well.
Karen?
I did notice that there are quite a few individuals that mentioned the overnight parking and the concerns about all the big buildings coming in and where visitors park. So we kind of addressed that a little bit at one of our meetings. So I think it's something to keep in mind, even though we're not really vested to visit that topic. But I think it's important that we keep in mind that maybe make a recommendation when we make our proposals that has to do with the town doing a study, or something that has to do with what's the impact, not necessarily of day parking, but overnight parking and visitor parking. Because I don't know if the 1.25 per unit, does the building have 2 visitor parking spaces for the entire building? I mean, that's kind of out there. And one of the comments that somebody made was that they don't have any place for their guests to park, that they have to park on the street. And that will then in turn impact any decisions we come up with later. So.
Did anybody else have comments? I didn't see any other hands, but I might have missed Tom.
Basically, my comments were from the survey, looking at the survey, and I did walk around and, to be honest, kind of prejudicial. I was talking to a lot of people behind CVS, because that's where I tend to spend a lot of time, though I did get some time to speak to some of the people down at Pampleboost when I went down to Brandy Court. The general consensus, some of the comments were they like the 30-minute parking out front at CVS. They'd like to see some 30-minute parking behind CVS, some of those spots. And that goes the same, Brandy Court. There's some down at the lower end of Haven, but they'd like to see some in the back of Brandy Court if possible. If the decision is made to go for meters downtown to charge for parking, the consideration be given that seniors are given a pass, some kind of a free pass, or to allow for them to park downtown. And a few people, the first thing they did say to me, they'd like to see a garage. And that's about all the comments that I have, please. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe one other thing we might just want to review just for information purposes. Julie, do you have that Google map link that you could share? I could do it as well if you don't.
What is it exactly? Sorry.
Let me see if I can find it. Where did I put it?
Excuse me for 1 second.
Get it up right.
You mean this one? I don't know if you can see that.
I can,
Oh, I guess I'm on my blurry thing, so it's not gonna let me see that.
I can, if you, let me see, can I share? Let's see, where's my Zoom? Here it is it possible for me to share? I think so. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think the, whoops, well, I don't know how to get.
Is that the distribution of the surveys?
Yeah, so what Kelly
Huh.
did, it was a lot of
Wow.
work, but what she did is hand input all the streets into a Google map and then plot them so that we kind of see for all the people who offered what street they lived on. This is the distribution of the survey, which I thought was good. As I'll try to, without being, so I think if we kind of go from the north side, that's Concord Street. Looks like we have some folks out here. And then that's sort of as we get out to Sanborn Hill, that obviously that's Concord Street. And then it kind of comes down. So I would say that we have a reasonably good distribution of residents from all around town.
Yeah, I'll say.
That was particularly helpful. I think initially we got a lot of, outreach downtown, but I think this,
Come here.
and then maybe one just quickly going over the responses. Let me see if I can.
And who did this map, Bernie? Someone at your office?
Yeah, well, she technically isn't in our office. She's a public relations firm. So she does this now. So yeah, so that's what she did. She just basically went through the survey, input all the street names, and yeah, that's what we got. So I thought that was helpful.
No, that's definitely helpful to see it like that.
I wonder if this was because of sending the link to the town meeting members. We were able to get.
I'm sure that had a big deal. It had a really big effect.
I'm sure that helped. I did send to every school principal asking them to include it in their newsletter if possible. I have no way of knowing if and when they will do it, but the ask was made.
Fantastic. All right, thanks, Liz. That was huge.
Sure.
Can now people see this? The screen that this is the responses. I think if, I thought it was interesting, the earlier comment about the, quote unquote elderly people, but, you see that we've got, I don't feel so elderly, but I am in one of the extreme categories here. So, yeah, I mean, 44% above 55, above, and then you have another 20. So you get close to 60% or 2/3 of the respondents over 45. And it's nice to see we have some younger people there. I'm going to skip over all this just to try to get to the some of the more relevant things for our recommendations. A lot of people working and shopping. I think I think we can also extract those that are kind of working as opposed to, it would have been nice, I think, to just separate these, but I think we do that in a later question anyway. I'm not going to go through all these comments because, and then these parking permits, I think there may have been some confusion between the resident free and the resident including compost and the compost only. It's hard to know. And then this number looks a little strange to me, the employee. Hard to see why 90% of the respondents would have an employee permit.
They don't have an employee permit.
No, we don't.
That's
They
no.
don't.
So they do not, sorry, okay, all right. Yeah, been a long
Yeah,
day.
I think there's only 35
yeah,
businesses
like-
replied.
Yeah, okay. So that number is, so the people who have employee permits would be yes, 69 and 33, but obviously these don't all add. Sorry, the employee permits are 11. The actual people who responded who have them compared to 107, and obviously these don't all add up to the total number of respondents. I think as of this afternoon, we had about 380 in total. So that is helpful. And then if we kind of go, I think earlier, Sarah, you said driving is like 97%. So aside from people who, it looks like a lot of people drive and then walk, or a lot of people walk because they live downtown. There was a lot of comments about that.
Bernie, can I add in something just while we're having general discussion?
Sure.
I felt like at the end, I think it was at the end of the last meeting, we were kind of working towards thinking that if we could get the employee to park out on the periphery, employees out in the periphery, it would be like a major step in the solution. But I was thinking about it afterwards, and like if I had a business, and so Liz and Tom, you can answer, but I feel like there would still need to be an availability to some employers to maybe pay for a closer spot who might be less abled, or maybe more apt to be carrying in a lot of boxes or leaving with a lot of boxes. So it seemed like there should be just another option for employers besides parking in the outskirts, that they might pay for a sticker. I don't know.
I don't think the idea is to get rid of all the parking. I think the idea is to move a bulk of the parking to include the outer core, but not get rid of all of it.
Okay.
The employee parking.
Yeah, I'm talking about the employee parking.
Right.
So Sarah, I will give you a current day use case for myself, because there's probably not much heavier than books that people might be bringing in and out. So I currently park in the outer core right now in employee parking over in Pleasant Street. But if I am making a delivery to a school, for example, which I do a lot here around town, then I will pull up my car and load them and then leave. Like I don't need to park there all day because I'm bringing something in and out. And same for my employees. My employees do not need to park right near for any length of time. If anybody's schlepping something in and out, then that's an in the moment thing. They don't need to have the ability to then have a employee parking that lasts all day near the business. I absolutely want all of us to move our employees away just to leave the spots for customers.
So you're thinking like the entire back CVS lot could do away with employee parking?
There is no employee parking back there. I mean, employees park down there, but right now, but there are no employee parking spots back there, and I don't think there should be.
Right. Okay. Weren't there some employees that it was 4 hours, so they parked their car like every 3 hours and 45 minutes?
Yeah, some people do, but that's because there haven't historically been enough employee parking permits.
Okay.
And we haven't created more employee parking spaces.
Okay.
And there's no enforcement as well.
And there's no enforcement currently, but in a perfect world, when enforcement is back happening, and if we created more employee parking in the outer core, then absolutely, let's get them out of there.
So just going back to this the survey, I mean, I think this is probably one of the most important things that I would take away from this, the amount of time people need parking. It's pretty high, less than 2 hours, but a very big chunk of it is 15 to 30 and 30 to 30 minutes to an hour. And clearly there's some, 2 to 4, but 4 to 6, of course. Greater than 6 would probably be more commuter rail people who I guess are not responding to this. But that I thought was useful for our deliberations.
Yeah, I agree, Bernie. I was surprised that there weren't more people saying that they needed longer than 2 hours, because, I kept hearing anecdotally from a lot of folks, I want to get my hair done and go out to lunch and blah, blah, blah. But I think that it happens so infrequently that people aren't thinking that as a core need. And so, yeah, it's great to see so much as 2 hours or less.
Right. And then I was kind of surprised at how many people kind of came with more than one person or with kids. I wasn't sure that we would have as many with children, but that sounds like it's a fairly, 35%, it's a third of the use. So that's just, I thought, relevant, but clearly a lot of people go down just by themselves in and out. And I was also surprised about this. 2 to 3 stops is not unusual. It's actually pretty frequent. So I guess if you're going to the bank, the post office, or picking up some whatever, I guess maybe that's, and then I think we get into that a little bit. And then, and people do seem to, you know, a high majority of people seem to walk, 83%. So, and I guess if you're going from the post office to Walgreens down, you know, closer to Walker's Brook, where, you know, I'm kind of surprised that CVS has as much business, quite frankly, with Walgreens having a huge amount of parking. You probably get as much as you want at Walgreens as you can at CVS. But for some reason, the focus is on CVS.
The Walgreens doesn't exist anymore, though. That's why.
No, there's a new one over by the railroad tracks near the McDonald's.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
There's a brand, I mean, it basically Walgreens has moved over there, took over, what was it, Rite Aid or?
Rite Aid. It's been there for a long time.
Yeah, and there's a ton of parking. So you don't necessarily need to go to CVS in Stoneham or North Reading, even though that was mentioned quite frequently in the responses. But you could easily go to Walgreens in Reading.
Well, what we don't know here is sort of the timing of you know, different people's needs. So, you know, think about if going back to the comment about, you know, I need 5 minutes or 15 minutes or something like that, right? And if there's a lot of people going to CVS or, you know, in that area, if you can pull in at 7 o'clock any night of the week, at even 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, any night of the week, and find a spot right in front of CVS. And so, right, that's a lot of people in the survey that could have that kind of parking need, you know, that's reflected in here. So we can't always think about this as what, you know, like what the police said that the, you know, core is 9 to 12, right? Sometimes a lot of this parking happens when there is capacity and quick stops in and out.
Yeah, I think I got most of that. Yeah, I guess.
Before I forget, I do want to share an anecdote that I've been saving up for you all. Because, you know, and I, as a business owner downtown, I'm grateful that a lot of our focus has been on like, how can we make sure the parking is supporting our businesses? I've had a couple of different people over the last couple of weeks come into the bookstore for the first time and say, I didn't realize you're here. And because I had to walk a little bit from where I was parking to where I was going, I found you.
Oh,
And I was like, I'm like, oh, how wonderful. So I had somebody who like parked over basically in front of Good Hearts and that dentist over there. And then they were walking to Christopher's to eat lunch. And then, so they saw, and they came shopping. And then we had somebody kind of going the other way. And I was just like, oh, that's a good, like, I wasn't even thinking actively about that myself, that part of what helps businesses downtown is if people can't get a spot right in front, because then you're going to see what else is there. So sorry, I've just been meaning to share that because it was so pleasant.
And relevant.
And relevant. Yes.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit mixed. I guess 5 to 10 and less than 5 minutes finding parking. Certainly seems like, you know, it takes a little bit of time to find parking. I don't know how accurate these numbers are, but that's certainly what's in people's minds. And then, I mean, seems like a fairly, well, 75% close to the destination and 23% not. But not seeming like a lot of time to get there. I guess that's really back to your point, Liz. If people are walking around a little bit, they do so. This is a little bit more difficult to interpret. I don't know if it's easier to see the graph or the numbers, but I think there's a lot of, I think what this simply reflects is that there are many reasons that people go downtown, both during the day and at night. And I thought that was pretty positive overall. As I don't know if anybody else had, so this is the timing that people go, daytime, nighttime. It certainly looks like daytime is the, at least that's what people are telling us, that they need more daytime parking, but nighttime for dining in and taking out. Of course, a lot of people, I think it's living downtown and other, but that's pretty straightforward. But this, I think what we definitely saw in some of the comments as well is that it's hard to map out all the uses that people have. I mean, some people go daily, weekly, monthly, for all kinds of different reasons to go downtown. So I would have to say that I was surprised at how intensive the use is of downtown. And obviously we're trying to make that even more intense, both for visitors as well as, putting more density downtown. I think, Sarah, you did a good job of summarizing that. Other than that, I think this kind of maps out the kind of half and half, more or less, in terms of adequate parking for their needs. A lot of comments here. And handicap, I think we talked about that. But yeah, here's where I think everybody's realizing how many comments we had about that. I think the hardest part about handicap parking is that it would be nice if a person could, I think maybe in the future, someday we'll have the technology where somebody who's handicapped is going to town and they can claim a handicap space. And in the meantime, it doesn't have to be not used because people aren't there to park in a handicap space, right? So this dynamic allocation of parking based on needs would be a great thing to have. I just don't think it's physically possible to do that. But
Can I ask a question?
yes, sir. Yes,
A
ma'am.
minimum or a maximum number of handicap spaces that the town needs to provide? Or is it
I think we had that. I think we had that question. I don't know. Julie, do you have any information for us on that?
Yeah, so there is, within a certain area, there's a requirement for a certain amount of spaces. The town engineer and engineering office recently actually did an audit downtown. And I believe they determined that we currently are at the appropriate threshold. That doesn't mean that having more wouldn't be a bad thing, would be a bad thing. But I think we do meet the requirement.
okay.
I wonder, when you go to the grocery store and they'll have two sites that have the stork that says for expecting mothers or young mothers. I wonder if you could put a sign that says reserved for senior citizen without having to make it a full scale handicap park. Behind
Enforce that though. I don't know how you'd enforce that.
Well, I think it's kind of you have to self-police, I don't know, I would never park in the expectant mother site. So
I think that the challenge there is that those kind of signs are on privately owned parking lots as opposed to.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I see your point. Yeah.
But it is a nice idea, Sarah.
It's a nice idea.
Well, I'm just thinking because not everybody is officially with the placard handicapped who kind of would really benefit from being a shorter walk to the rear of CVS. It's all. So I'm just thinking how we could help them.
Well, I think the turnover would help them.
Yes.
So I think that's the solution.
Yeah, but still that has to be enforced. So, right?
Yep.
So, that's like a whole day job, So.
It might be, well, maybe, I guess maybe just going back to the survey, we finish this discussion out and then we.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
Recommendations. But on, looks like clearly the CVS in the back or in the front of CVS. And then Main Street, I thought, looks like Main and Haven, very popular. So, and then seems like somewhat equally divided in some respects on whether it's easy or difficult. But in the CVS lot, it's looks like it's pretty evenly divided. Cobblestone, people see, that's probably the one standout, that and Main Street being difficult to park. Otherwise, and the numeric examples of that, I think we're pretty much close to being done. These parking zones help or not. So the legend here is it works. Blue, it's more difficult and it doesn't, it's not applicable to somebody's needs, but going up. Yeah, it looks like 2 hours, 30 minutes seems to be the highlight, and then 2 hours, and then it sort of drops off. And just do people go outside because they can't get parking? That's somewhat pretty, it's about as equally weighted as you can get. So I think that tells us, I mean, I guess ideally would like to see that. You know, I don't go anywhere because, don't have to go anywhere else because we have adequate. So I mean, you'd like that to be pretty low on the negative side. And then these other, I thought this was pretty useful, that other parts of Reading, so people go to other parts of Reading or Wakefield, looks like Wakefield, Stoneham. And these are kind of frequencies that people do this, but sometimes maybe the numbers here are a little bit better.
We left out Woburn. We should have done Woburn, I think.
A lot of people mentioned Woburn. I mean, if you look at the responses here, people definitely mentioned Woburn many times here. See them all? Here, 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 all these here. So definitely it deserves mention for sure. And I was surprised how many people said that they're going to park very often in downtown. I think that's getting to, yeah, that sort of wraps it up. So any other comments on this part of the discussion? So the other thing, so I guess I mean, if we were just without trying to keep our minds open and so forth with respect to, if we were to just try to match up a parking policy relative to what we're seeing in the survey, are there any comments? I mean, I guess just looking at those questions with respect to the 15 to 30, 30 to 60, and then the 2 hours, it seems like that's a huge bulk of the demand. And it seems like the CVS lots, front and back, and maybe, are the kind of the key issues here. So what jumped out at me is that maybe creating a small number of spaces that are more frequent, lower time, and then after that, it doesn't seem to really make a whole lot of difference. I think that we already went from a 2 hour zone to 4. Certainly 4 incorporates almost everybody's needs. Then the only question is, how do you create that? I know we talked about that earlier, but if most of the people are just there for less than an hour and a lot less than 30 minutes, I guess what I'm thinking about is that there's a natural turnover that you don't really need. You don't really need to worry about it because people are coming and going, and the spaces turn over a fair amount. So it's almost like that doesn't necessarily need to be regulated because it's self-regulating, because that's what people are just using it for. And then I mean, at least that's what I take away from the survey. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts on that.
I think, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, John.
I think we need to think about the math there a little, right?
The what?
I think we need to I think we need to think about the math on that, because if just one person stays 4 hours, right, they are taking the space for, 8 people that want to come and park 30 minutes. So, so I think saying, regulating, right? It's the, I'm going to use a tragedy of the commons thing, right? That just a couple of people monopolizing those spaces means that they won't meet the needs of many more people, right? That do actually only want to come, that have the need to only come for a short period. So I do think we need to think about that, not just the demand and, but also how do the people that stay there longer, how do they, I'm going to say monopolize, or, they're taking a bigger chunk of the parking. And is that what we want? Is that a desirable and needed use of those parking?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, we can look at the
Can I
number.
say something? Maybe I'm misinterpreting all the evidence, but I feel like there's a high request for the 4 hours to be dropped to at least 2. So I think there's many comments about how 4 hours is just too long for both lots. And it should be reduced to at least 2. And my analysis is that it should even be 30 minutes or an hour. I mean, I'm all for a kiosk at this point, because that's going to force a turnover. And you can still have someone like Liz who, not impact Main Street, but I think the lots, they're not self-regulating, even if they're being managed, because just like John said, people are going to stay there for 4 hours, and that's taking up an awful lot of space for people that only want to be there for 15 minutes. So I don't know if I'm reading things differently, but that's what I'm getting out of all of this.
I think maybe oh, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, in my brain right now is saying it looks like there's 3 things. 1, you pay a police officer to go around and be enforcing it. And I don't know what his weighted time is, $100 an hour, $150 an hour. 2, you hire a parking person and it's their time. And 3, maybe you put in a parking meter that's a quarter. I don't know. It's clearly people don't want to have meters on Main Street or Haven Street, but in the lots, it seems like if you don't do some sort of paid parking there, it would be a never-ending job to constantly go up and down every 30 minutes, or even if it's 2 hours, I don't know, because no matter what we come up with, it's enforcing it. So if you're going to enforce it by having to pay somebody to enforce it, or you're going to enforce it by having people have to put some money in a meter so that, they could get a ticket. They may or may not get a ticket. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know what is everybody else thinking?
Sometimes a single, like once a month, just having a bunch of tickets show up on your windshield is enough that the word gets around really fast. And that's all you have to do, maybe. And you don't have to have somebody there all day, every day. And it might actually create the turnover. I mean, it would, I think, John, your point is well taken, that if you have 100 spaces and 100 people parked there for 4 hours, I doubt that's really what's happening, but it could be. Let's suppose that's the extreme, right? Then you've obviously not provided the usage for the people who want it for 15 to 30 minutes. And that's your point, which is an important one. So yeah, I mean, but if you had, it's, I think trying to manage the whole parking person, and that's another payroll person for the town. It's
The police chief did say that they're in the process of hiring a full-time person. So it used to be between. So it's not. They're going to have one. So
yeah, I'm just trying to
cost any more money.
I'm trying to keep an open mind about what do we actually really need. I mean, if in fact the overall demand is 15 to 30 or 60 minutes, and that's really what's going on, and then you have a small group who are who are using it more intensively, or not intensively, but occupying it for a longer length of time, just hitting those people a few times will probably get the message across really quick with a ticket. And,
Well, and I think, again, getting back to like, who is actually parking there for long periods of time?
yeah,
It's employees. You get the employees out of the way. And I agree with you, Bernie, that the lion's share of the people parking downtown who are not employees are going there for more of these, for 2 hours or less. And so you have, you still need enforcement, but it's less of a problem. But it's the use case of who is sitting there for 4 hours or more at a time. That's employees. Like,
Yeah,
if
but
we can get them out of the
does-
lots.
but how does anybody walking by that car really know they're employees? That's the problem with the employee.
You don't, but
permit.
well, we know because there's no, as people are self-reporting what they're doing downtown, nobody is sitting there saying, I'm doing 4 hours worth of errands, dining and shopping. Right?
Yeah,
The people who are
and
parking
most
there for
people
that
are not.
long are not, most people are not going downtown to park there for 4 hours at a time.
That seems pretty clear from the.
Jean
from
and
the
Andrew and
survey.
I see the CVS parking lot outside of our window, and we watch every morning it fill up with employees of all those businesses. So,
And the same, right, and the same with the Brandy
And
Street.
Brandy Court. Yeah.
It's 6:30 in the morning, it's half full.
I
And
think, oh, sorry, that was Bernie's question. How do we know who is an employee parking and who isn't? I
Because
think
we
that's
see them
know
go
it's
into
not
their business
customers.
and not come out.
well, and
Yeah.
the customers aren't there at 6:30 in the morning, the stores aren't
Yeah.
open.
they
So,
have, some of them wear
What stores are
uniforms.
open?
Some of them wear uniforms.
Okay.
What stores are open at 6:30 in the morning that need all those employees?
the dentist office is in Brandy Court, so all the nurses are coming in and going.
Yeah, you see everybody in their scrubs coming in.
So, and then you see nurses parking on a very typical Woburn and in CVS going to the other dentist office. And you see the CVS people coming in and they're dispersing throughout the town, wherever it is that they're going because they can. So once enforcement begins, we need to give them an option. We need to give them more spaces that they can go to and feel comfortable parking there and not have, Liz's employees park in someone in front of his house and be ridiculed for parking in front of their house. They need to have, it needs to be organized so that they can, we respect the employees because they work here and allow them to park in our town and not make them chase their tails trying to find a space. There's a lot of spaces for employees in 2-hour parking. It's just not designated correctly. So if we get them out of the two main lots, out a little bit, it will alleviate some of the problem. And the enforcement will take care of the CVS, as you say, as long as they're parking there. But 4 hours in those lots is too long.
What if you just put, I'd like to have two questions. One, what if you just put in a sign there that says no employee parking? And the second question is, well, I guess.
Can
Now,
I suggest, right, we're mixing up enforcement and the reason for parking. And to
Right.
some degree, I think we need to first figure out is, what's the, and by the way, is this better? Can you hear me better?
That's
Little
very,
bit, yeah.
much better, John, thanks.
First, right, 2 hour, 30-minute, forget about why they're parking, but like where should that parking occur? And then I think it turns into, okay, we do need to provide someplace for 4-hour parking. Where would that be? Why are they doing that? Are they visitors? Are they, are they employees? How do we manage those, those effectively? But right, I think first is, where, how long and where, and because I think we can get sidetracked on enforcement pretty quickly.
Yeah, I guess my other question was how many employees do we think we have that are in these, that are taking the spaces? I mean, and how do we, we see, it sounds like there's anecdotal evidence that you guys see this and it's hard to refute that.
I can say that the entire time I've always been saying that the parking issue isn't the residents, it's the employees have always been the parking issue. I agree that, you know, for me, I'm biased. So once again, it doesn't matter because I don't have walk-in traffic. I don't need any of that. So for me, I don't need to have a storefront that relies on, you know, that kind of walk-in traffic. So for me, walking, it doesn't matter, I guess. So for me, I wouldn't mind parking on an outer core in general. I just think that the issue hopefully doesn't come down to a liability thing. I don't know if that ends up playing a role at all, where if it was Florida, it's different. We're in New England, we got snow, ice, the whole thing. So my fear is that all the CVS people that shouldn't park there, you're gonna have to park up here. And now they're walking down that hill, and then that's the end of it. So that's just one aspect to take into account, but it's always been the employees are the issue. It's not the residents. But to move us out onto the streets, like I said, I don't have an issue. Some residents do, which, you know, I don't live over there, so I can't, you know, say how much of an issue it would be. I know if someone's parked outside of my house here, it's kind of annoying, I guess. Like, why would you be there? So, you know, I can kind of understand their point of view. But my fear is that we wouldn't have enough spots, or we end up creating a safety issue on the street, where if that CVS lot has 30 people, I don't know where you're putting 30 people on the street. I just don't. And that's not the 30 people alone. That's the other people that would just randomly be parking there, even though it said employee only or whatever scenario that ends up being. I just don't see how there's enough spots for it.
There's about 80 spots on Woburn Street, and there's already parking on Woburn. So it's a matter of changing the sign from 2 hour to employee or 2 hour.
Yeah, no,
or just unlimited, because once you eliminate the time limit, now you've opened it up for those employees who can park there without having to worry about it.
The 2 hour, I think, is to avoid commuters.
Well, it doesn't sound like nobody's talked about commuters in the CVS lot.
Yeah, well, but the commuters do park up into the neighborhoods right past so that's exactly what that's for, is to prevent commuters from coming and taking those spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, the good news for the lower half of downtown is that where all of those leased spaces next to the train tracks stopped being these spaces. Julie, I don't know if you remember, like, I can't remember how many, but it's like a lot. Was it 41?
Yeah.
41.
So 41 spaces next to the train stop, if those turned into employee all day with permit or 2 hour,
Wow.
then that takes care of a huge number of problems in the Brandy Court lot right there. Just be like, you're parking over here and you walk 50 yards to your office. Like that could solve a lot right there. And then, yeah, Karen, to your point, the Woburn Street ones, if we make the whole of Woburn Street, then it is already parking. And then the other part is like, yeah, sometimes it's annoying if somebody's parking on your street. People park on streets. I mean, that's life, right? I mean, people park. I am nowhere near the downtown, and I have random people parking on my street with far more regularity than I would imagine. And I don't own the street. The town owns the street. That's just it. Like, I think that's just the cost of living in a town and the cost of living near a downtown. I don't think that's unreasonable to have some parking, particularly since it's not like any employees are getting off work at 1 a.m, right? I mean, it's like people are parking on the street during business hours. That's not I just don't think that's a huge imposition.
I was unaware of a parking change in general, Julie. So is this parking change temporary or is it permanent?
Talking about the lease spaces?
I'm talking about a parking change that I didn't know about.
Are you asking about the
Liz
ones on
just
the
mentioned?
lease spaces were abolished? So now that's permanent. That's not temporary.
Okay.
The
The
select board
voted
voted
on September 2020.
Okay.
to
Thank you.
eliminate the leased spaces. And then at the same meeting, they they suggested to create this park committee.
Come here.
So I guess, like I said, for me personally, I won't mind walking, etc. You know, I'm a 42-year-old guy. I don't have to worry about this. But my fear is, if you get elderly employees, you get For me, it seems as if that's the direction this is going anyway. So I'm not opposed to trying it, to moving people to the outer core and all that. I'm fine with it. I just fear as if we're not going to have enough spots that people seem to think there are. Because you can always say there's enough, there's this. I told you, I turned that corner and that entire beginning of Woburn Street is lined with cars. Right at like 8:45, 9 o'clock every single morning. So I'm just wondering where those people go. Now, if you say now they're just going to go into CVS lot because they're only there in the morning to get coffee, you have an argument there, but we can't guarantee that's what's going to happen. I just know it's fully packed up there that whole way down, up until what is it, the funeral home that's at that corner, and then it's obviously a ghost town. So.
Well, and the ghost town is where all the parking spaces are vacant. So
Correct, but I'm saying that now all of a sudden somebody from Bunratty's is going to park all the way over there and then walk over to that.
they can also park across Main Street on some of the streets down that way, Lower Haven and Pleasant Street. And it's not all the employee parking on Woburn. There's still tons of employee parking along all those other streets on the other side of Main Street.
Right, we just need to extend it so that there's
We
more.
need to extend it and mark it correctly so that they know they can go there. And you know, I would propose when you hand out the free permits to the employees, you give them a little map to show there's free parking here, there's parking here, like give them the options so that they at least know where the spaces are. And that's the best we can do. But I did a whole list of street by street downtown and took Julie's list and modified some of them. And there's, you know, potential of 400 spaces that they could possibly park in. That's a lot of spaces.
The number, do we have a real count on the number of employees in downtown?
Well, I think that will change as the more storefronts that go in. I mean, there's a lot of empty storefronts.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to obviously, if we have more development, it's going to be a lot more employees, right? But do we have a current count of the number? We must have it someplace. I mean, is it 30? Is it 300? I mean, I'm just trying to get a.
It's
So
a
isn't
minimum.
there 60 at the dentist alone?
It's a minimum of 150 because that's how many parking permits are
That's
issued.
Right, so we had at least 150 plus, so it's somewhere above 150. And it's not clear they all park at the same time on the same day and so on and so forth.
They definitely don't. Like my own employees do not.
Matter.
And even myself in a given day. Sometimes I'm at my store all day and sometimes I'm in and out.
Right. But I mean, I guess when I think about you have, and I think this goes back to John's point, which is the math. I mean, you have a town with 20, how many thousand people do we have? 23, 25? 25,000 people. And we're talking about 150 who seem to be dominating all of our discussions. And we're trying to bend over backwards or to try to resolve the issue for these 150 people to make the lives of 20 something thousand. And I know they all aren't driving and so on and so forth, but I think you get the point.
Yeah, I don't think it's that it's trying to accommodate the 150 people. I think it's saying solve the problem for the other 22,000 people of getting the employees out of their way in a sustainable way.
Those 150 people are blocking the use for the other 20,000.
Right, but if those
And that's the
150
issue,
people
right.
don't have anywhere to park, then those other people don't have anywhere to go.
Exactly. So
If you don't have employees at the stores and restaurants, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, you're both right. You're both right.
And the evidence
Or if
is
you-
that they pretty much go elsewhere. So,
You can eliminate the 150 people and then nobody's coming downtown.
there you go.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly. And
That's
it's not,
my
and we're not,
belief.
I mean, if we were trying to accommodate the 150 people, we'd be like, let's turn CVS lot into only employees. We're not, we're trying to get them the hell out of
Right.
the way.
No, that's precisely my point. Yeah.
So
Well, and it's also encouraging, sorry.
go ahead. No,
It's encouraging new businesses to come to town. I mean, we've heard arguments from businesses saying they don't want to come to town because there's a parking issue. So if we're
Mhm.
in the employee parking issue and their customers can park close by for the 15 to an hour, then it's a win-win for everybody.
So I think
Did
what
you say something, John?
I think that what we need to, and we're circling around it, right, is we have different use cases that we need to think about, and the survey, right, the survey is helping us identify what those different use cases are, right? There's certainly the customer use case, which from the survey says, 2 hours or less is sufficient, and that would take care of that. And I think we probably need to think about where those spots need to be. There's what we just talked about, the employee use case. And we need to also think about it, which we haven't discussed, and probably, is the commuter rail Parker, where it's not reflected in the survey at all, or barely, because because COVID and blah blah blah, right? So, but we need to make sure that we accommodate and I'm going to say protect against the commuter parking all day, in some of these lots, but not overcommit to commuter space. And I guess the fourth thing that I've been thinking about, and maybe taking up more space than the commuters these days, is all the construction employee, the contractor parking, which I do think I think we need to sort of figure out how that plays in what we're seeing today, and then how we might accommodate that, or how we may need to or not need to accommodate that in the future. But I think that I from Chris, from what you were saying, like you see all this parking on Woburn Street, there's a lot of contractors parking in downtown these days, and in a couple of years, that same demand isn't gonna be there. Right, because we only have so many parcels to develop.
Yeah, at the beginning of when you turn down and it's Cafe Nero and all that, that's the area that I'm talking about. And I don't see construction-ish kind of vehicles. Perhaps they are, but driving cars, I guess, but not the typical thing you would see at Postmark, that was just out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm thinking is that you sort of have we have maybe four issues. One, the high frequency use in basically the CVS Brandy and Cobblestone parking. That seems to be one big chunk of usage, that there's demand for high frequency there, and we prefer not to have long-term parking there. Then you have kind of the complement set of those people, right? So if we don't really, it seems like we don't need to care, assuming we get good turnover in those two lots, or the Cobblestone, let's call it three: Brandy, Cobblestone, and CVS, back of CVS. Once you sort of solve that problem, then it doesn't seem like there's anywhere else beyond that. Seems like people are probably not likely to use it from 2 to 4 hours. Some of them will, but after 4 hours, it's not a whole lot, except for those people who have to go to work, use the commuter rail. So you've got the commuter parking, the high frequency, and then anything else. I mean, anything else could be anything over 2 hours. You could park there all day, with the constraint that maybe the commuter rail, has to be somehow carved out for that. So, do people see that as being a viable solution? Like make 2 hours. What I'm saying is make 2 hours, go back to 2 hours in CVS, and then post no employee parking in the CVS lot in the Brandy Court. Just say no employee parking. I don't know how you enforce it, but maybe it's just a way to, remind people. And then anybody that parks there, you send a traffic enforcement or parking enforcement around a couple of times a month, not going to cost a lot. And they just kind of sit there and people see them sitting there and issuing tickets and, then, and what's the point if they can park anywhere else, a street or two over, for as long as they need, then they probably don't care about parking parking in a lot that's 2 hours. Seems like it would, if you look at a lot of the outside towns around us, I've been driving around those, and it's that seems to be the solution that a lot of the other towns around us use as well. And then the only question for me becomes, we've got these different permits, and we could sort of simplify them by saying we have one resident permit. You pay, and maybe you don't get it for free, but maybe you don't have to pay a lot of money for it. It's a de minimis amount that just separates the difference between residents and non-residents for certain regions that maybe, for commuter rail. I mean, that was the traditional way we handled that. So, that I'm just trying to move us toward the agenda item, which is can we draft some proposals? And all I would say is that maybe we don't have to have a proposal, but maybe we give the select board and the PTTF, our views, and give them a menu that says, you can do this or that, but we're not here to make the final decision. I think we probably make a couple of things, and then I think we talked about sending out another survey later with perhaps our proposals, and then we get feedback from people on that as well.
I
Any
think,
comments?
yeah, Bernie, thanks. I think that I lost my train of thought for the first time ever.
Can I jump in while you're getting it?
Yes, you
Karen,
Thanks,
Karen, why don't you?
You can chime
It'll
in.
come to you, I promise.
It is.
I thought it was our goal to present them with something, because.
Yeah, I think it is.
That's what.
So I think presenting 4, 5, 6 different versions is not accomplishing what we were tasked to do. I think that we, I put together something that I don't know when we're going to present our proposals, but I think we need to come up with a streamlined proposal similar to what Julie had presented originally and outline it for them, because it's not the select board's job to look into it further. That's what our job is to do. So.
Yeah, agreed.
So could it be as easy as we all email Andrew the suggestions we have, and then next meeting we go through the entire list of everybody's suggestions and we just vote on them? Or is that?
So I emailed Andrew something today because I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about it today or not. And it was, bullet points per people, and then a list of all the different streets. Oh my gosh, how good is that little one? And then I listed a whole bunch of streets and how many spaces are available on each street, and tweaked some of the parking regulations that are there now. So that's what I thought we were tasked to do from the beginning. So
that is what you're right, Karen. That's what we were tasked to do for this meeting. Yes. Thanks.
So Julie can share that, or she can. I sent it to them today, thinking that when it's time for us to distribute them, then we would distribute them. But
I remember what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
What's your other thing then?
That I think by the time that this comes before the select board, it would be safe to assume that the police would have hired an enforcement person by that time, because that's like a month or two. And I believe they said they were actively looking for.
So I might
Rose, Liz.
Start again, Liz.
A slide.
We can't hear. I can't hear you.
Yeah, you're breaking up. You're frozen.
I hear you.
Modification.
Is she still there?
No, we can't hear.
Process to suggest, if I may.
No.
You keep breaking up.
You need more bandwidth. Maybe turn off your video, Liz. There you are. You're back.
Oh, there you are.
I'm back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Sort
A
of.
little better.
Tiffy.
Okay. I was going to suggest a slight variation to our process. I had also jotted together some thoughts, but not as comprehensively as I think Karen did. I'm going to suggest, because we can safely communicate to one person at a time, if Karen is willing to take on this role, if we all sent our suggestions to Karen, because it sounds like you've already synthesized a great outline. And so maybe if you could put together a first draft of like, here's an overall plan. And then if there's any deviation in what any of us are telling you, then we can discuss the deviations next week. But I feel like we're like pretty close on the same page in many ways. I don't know. Karen, how would you feel about that? I don't mean to be assigning you a job.
No, that's fine. I can throw it all on a spreadsheet and then, send it back to Andrew and Julie, and we can talk about it as one document as opposed to.
Exactly. Are people comfortable with that idea?
So it's a one-way street, just to Karen, no exchange back and forth.
Correct.
Just to Andrew.
No, to
Julie.
you, Karen, just to you. Each of us individually, could send you a thing and not have an open law problem.
Okay.
And then I'll send the result one to Julie and Andrew.
Yes.
Okay.
Send it out to everybody.
Is everybody comfortable with that idea?
I mean, maybe what we could do is is part of the agenda item that we were tasked with today was to just come up with some ideas and discuss them now. I mean, as part of the agenda tonight. So, I mean, Karen, if you want to share what your proposal was, and then if anybody else has done, I mean, I've got some as well. I don't know if anybody else was able to do it. Did anybody else kind of put some bullet points together in terms of recommendations aside from Karen and I?
I'd like to hear from Tom.
I got 2 bullets.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts.
Okay, well, why don't we just go through Karen, would you
I
like
feel
to
like we've
start?
kind of been discussing a lot of these already tonight, though. That was why the idea was kind of like we put it all together in one thing.
Well, Karen, you want to just start with, just give us your bullet points, and then we'll maybe we all have the same bullet points.
So I'm just going to read it down. The first, recommend we make a data request to the town regarding planned for approved actual and anticipated street parking impacts from all the new development downtown. That's a whole other thing. I also, part of that was proposing they hire a consultant to determine the actual street parking impact for current residents and the impact from current and additional projects. We only have data from us observing things. We don't have any hard data on who's parking overnight, where, whatever, but that's kind of a big topic. But I wanted to put it out there. There's some other stuff in here that is not relevant to our discussion right now. I talked about employees would be given a map with available parking areas. My proposal was kiosks placed in CVS, Brandy Court, and Herndon lots. Julie's information, the pay by plate was the better version, and have the first half hour be free, which was basically the survey presented a lot of those, it should be free for the first half hour, and after that they could pay as they go. Expand or revamp the handicap parking, because there was a lot of complaints in that. One suggestion was the town hall parking lot. It's open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I don't know what the town thinks about having that be employee parking for the weekends. Regulations are they're right now Monday through Friday on some of the signage. Maybe we could push it Monday through Saturday. Classification of resident only 6:30 to 10:30. I proposed changing it 6:30 to 9:30 so that some of the employees could get in some of those spaces earlier, but it would still prevent commuters from parking there. Sector above Woburn Street, Linden, Mount Vernon, Bancroft, Middlesex High just remain as unregulated and open. So that would capture a lot of employee parking who want to walk that far. Some people do want to walk that far, and there's a lot of parking there, but I don't think it should be regulated. Like Jay had said, less regulation is sometimes better. Sanborn, upper and lower, is used a lot by construction, overnight parking for the apartment building on Sanborn, and there's a ballet conservatory at the top, so Sanborn has to be treated kind of differently, but that's a longer discussion. Then I listed all the streets that are in the downtown area with their current or proposed parking proposal. Like if it's 2 hour on Woburn, I modified it to 2 hours /employee, and I listed a list of the number of spaces that would be available. So I tweaked some of the spaces according to Julie's map from a while ago, and some of them stay the same, and some of them that are 2 hour, I dropped to 1 hour to kind of get the turnover going.
Where was that, Karen?
Where was what?
The 1 hour?
There's many street, like Gould Street right now has, dropped that to 1 hour because there's a new construction there. There's really only like 3 spaces in front of the new Gould Street Ace Flats. So I'm not sure what's going on with those things, but there's a lot of smaller streets either on the other side of Main Street or within the downtown Green Street area that have regulations that either stay the same as they were on the maps or that they get tweaked a little bit so that they can accommodate the residents have it until 9:30 and then employees can park there as well. So there's some parking down there that could be had. So it's a long kind of list. I'm not going to hold it up like this, but
Okay,
so that's the ballpark of the things that I had written down.
thanks for doing that.
You're welcome.
Wow.
Any other? I mean, I had some thoughts. I mean, it's much less, well, I have basically 3 bullet points, but I probably am missing 1 or so. But I was just thinking with respect to seeing as what the survey is telling us is that Brandy Court, CVS, and Cobblestone are probably the areas of highest concern. And in those, we could just create 30-minute spots, or it could be 60, but I would just say 30 because it just creates more frequency. At, in X percent of those spaces in CVS, Brandy Court, and the Cobblestone. And then let's suppose X percent is 50%. And then the other 50% in those up to 2 hours. And marked as no employee parking. And then other spaces downtown, just unlimited time, with the exception of some resident permit, which would effectively duplicate or even expand some of the commuter rail. And that would be it. Just make it short and simple and have a parking enforcement in those 3 lots, because it doesn't sound like we need a whole lot of parking enforcement elsewhere, because what people are telling us is that they, except for the commuters, they're going to need very, very, very few people need more than 4 anyway. So to me, it just seems like that would be simple for the select board to act on. And then the only other thing would probably be, I mean, that we've heard this many times, and that's just some sort of a parking garage or additional parking. We have a finite number of public spaces. The only question is, how do we make more? And the only way you make more is not either by eminent domain, taking property, or constructing more spaces somehow, which is a budget decision for the town. Okay, yeah, Liz.
So just a couple of additional thoughts regarding overnight parking for guests of people living downtown. I just think part of the plan should be potentially those 41 formerly leased spaces down on High Street. I was thinking of those as multi-use spaces where during the day they could be employee parking all day or 2 hour, and then overnight they could actually be visitor parking for overnight.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then additionally, if it was possible, I understand the problems that the town had in the past with the Pleasant Street Center and people parking overnight there. A slight variation on that was I was actually thinking the town hall lots, if that was allowed as guest overnight parking just Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, because we know that town hall, so inherently you shouldn't have anybody there past the Sunday anyway. Which hopefully,
It's a good
on the
idea.
Pleasant Street, people were there, 7 days a week, they potentially could be there thwarting folks. And I understand there are snow removal challenges in both of these cases, but I do think it is valid to say that while the downtown developments, I think, have done a great job of providing sufficient parking for their residents, it is a tricky thing to not have a place to offer guests. And I don't think it's going to be a huge use case, but I think it's enough of one that would be great if we had an actual answer to that question.
Mhm. I agree. I still think that there should be, I don't know if you could make a portion of the town hall parking lot, but there should be some place where employers could pay to have a closer spot. So I really think some people just maybe less able to walk, and because of the weather or whatever reason. I just feel like there should be a space carved out, maybe see how it goes. Maybe nobody uses it, or maybe we don't, I don't know, I think we should still think about that.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought about is if you make a lot of spaces, except for, like 2 or 3 spot, if you make commuter rail and then the 3 lots that I talked about, if you restrict everything to there, but everything else is unlimited, you wouldn't need to pay. That's what that's sort of the beauty of having unlimited, because once you've allowed people to, instead of trying to restrict their behavior, you sort of make it available to them, and then they don't have a need to pay, because they don't have to pay anyway. I don't see, it seems like it's a reasonably elegant solution, but.
Yeah, again, the problem just becomes the commuter rail. The problem just becomes commuter rail people.
Well, we already have that designated, right? I'm not suggesting that. It would be nice to have more, quite frankly. There's no doubt in my mind that we need more commuter rail spaces, not today, but to the degree that people, I've started to see, my employees downtown are saying that, like we had a meeting yesterday with a guy who came in from Franklin, I guess it was, or southwest of Boston. And he said he came in this week on the commuter rail from there. Every seat on the commuter rail was taken. A month ago, he did the same trip. He was the only person on the car. So I think, and I've noticed the traffic going in and out of Boston is much higher this week and the last week and this week. So people are definitely going back, and there's still many, many employers who don't want people in the office yet. Yeah, Karen.
Can I ask you to clarify what you mean by unlimited? I get confused by that.
I guess all day. All day. Now the question is,
you would never know if it's an employee or not.
What difference does it make? If a car is parked there and it needs to park for 4 hours and then they leave, what difference does it make if it's an employee or a shopper or a patient or whatever? So all I'm trying to do is look at the survey, I'm just saying that one slide that says, here is our demand. Our demand is 15 to 30, 30 to 60, which is a huge amount of the people. And then up to 2 hours, you get a few more up to 2 hours. Beyond that, the people that need to park for more than 2 hours to 4, at least in the survey, is very small. And I think in the prior surveys, it was very similar. So I just, I'm just trying to match up the real issues here. And then throughout the survey, everything people seem to talk about was Brandy Court, CVS, and the Cobblestone.
But I don't understand how, if it's unlimited, you can track who's an employee.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter, because we've already determined that the employees are taking up all the parking spaces now. So I don't know.
But the only places that we're worried about them taking up parking spaces is CVS, Brandy Court, and the Cobblestones. Cobblestones they can't do anyway, because I think, isn't that 2 hours already?
It's 2 hour employee, 2 hour or employee right now.
Yeah.
Employees can't park in the Cobblestone. It's just 2 hour. No, but so Karen, he's not saying that all things should be, he's saying everything outside of the lots would be.
Oh, okay.
Not the lots.
That's why I asked a clarification.
Yeah. Sorry.
What I was talking about.
What I said about those 3 lots, mark 50% of the spaces, 30-minute spots. Maybe it's 45, maybe it's 60, but let's suppose you just say 30 minutes. And then the other 50% of those spaces in those lots, and only those lots, up to 2 hours. So that sort of already means that the employees who need to park for more than 2 hours can't park there. So what's their alternative? Well, anywhere else outside of there, you can park. And there seem to be enough spaces. It just seems to me like what the survey is telling us is that people very rarely need it for more than 4 hours, except if they commute to Boston on the train.
I think it would be dangerous to not include Main Street, Haven Street, within these regulations. I think you still need to keep the 2-hour parking on all of that.
On those streets. I see what you're saying.
Or 30-minute in front of CVS.
Or 30, yeah, it's 2 hour
Yeah,
or
an
less.
hour, whatever.
I mean, I
Right.
agree that
Yeah, that's what
having some more shorter time spaces would be great too. But it's
Yeah,
still,
that's
yeah,
really-
it still leaves the whole point though, is that to get those long parkers further out, there needs to be something, some sort of ethos that makes it clear to people on those outer streets that yes, sometimes people are parking on those streets. And that's
Yeah.
just, that has to be, it needs to be clear that that's part of what's going to happen here.
Right. And what helped, so then the question becomes enforcement, which I think you pointed out earlier, John, that, and that makes the, you know, if you reduce the restrictive parking to a relatively small part of town, let's suppose it's those 3 lots, or Liz, let's suppose you include Haven Street on that just for purpose. Now you have a parking enforcement person whose job for 8 hours a day is to walk those 3 lots and up and down the street, give out a bunch of tickets to people who are not doing it. And then the word gets out really quick and everybody else goes somewhere else to park, and they're very welcome to park there.
So I do think we need to be cautious about relying too much on the results of the survey.
Survey. Mhm.
Yeah, because right, we captured who we captured. You know, I'm not so sure we captured the employees. I've just thrown an example out. The teenage employees or what have you of CVS, right? That they're not filling out a survey, right? You know, they have, I don't know how long their shifts are, but they have, I imagine, 3 or 4 hour shifts. And so, right, I think we probably, I'm guessing that the survey is undercounting some of the demand for longer term parking because they're just not necessarily as involved in the community as the people who are coming down and going shopping and are involved in, you know, renting stuff. So I think we need to be cognizant of
Yeah, I mean, I
surveys.
think it would, I would agree. I think it would be useful to try to, you know, stop, think, brainstorm a little bit more about, and maybe just do some more walking surveys or.
I like the idea, right? I mean, there's a whole notion of, you know, stop regulating and you know, just stuff in general, and it'll regulate itself. And maybe downtown Reading parking is part of that. I think that if not for commuter rail, I think that could very well work. I'm very cautious about what happens in sort of the commuter rail side of downtown. I think that's
Yeah.
You know, if we were doing this, you know, 3 years ago, right, that would be front and center.
I guess the whiteboard question is, what are the unintended, I always try to figure out whenever you're making policy, what are the unintended consequences that we have yet to think about that would muck up this whole idea? And that's I guess one of them could be, you know, a lot of residential development where they don't want to park in that the 1.25 is inadequate and it spills out. Yeah, sorry, Chris, did you want to have a?
Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah, I was gonna, the 1.25 thing, I know it's already been said that their garages aren't full or whatever. It's yet to be seen, like I said, when parking in Reading is only going to get worse. I don't think that we're going to turn into Cambridge where everyone's walking around and riding bikes all day. As much as some people would like to see that, I mean, for me, Main Street is still a major issue with that. I guess the main task of it for us was that the regulations are too confusing. So to Bernie's point, by making it 2 hours and then just, you know, unrestricting everything else would make it less confusing. My only fear with that would be that if you allow anybody on these, the outer core things to park wherever they want, you might end up screwing up the employee portion that would be parking out there. Because then other people would be out there to begin with because it's not labeled. But I like the idea of not having like any restrictions on it other than, you know, the hot button spots for parking. And then we can't forget about Main Street out in front of Dan's store and all that. Like those need 15, 30 minutes, etc. I mean, you can't get around that. So that's like its own special case example. For me to just put something to bed as a bullet point, I've harped on the garage idea or second deck, which would be more aesthetically pleasing for people, or the other person who mentioned about digging down kind of thing. I think that if we moved everybody to the outer core, but also explored the option, is a parking facility, whatever scenario, even feasible? Because Liz mentioned that some people own spots out there, et cetera. Like, is it even possible? Can we even do a second level over there? Or it comes back, a consultant or wherever says that you guys can't do it, X and Y reason, and then that's it. Nobody could ever bring up a parking garage ever again because we're not able to have it. Or they come back and say you can have it, it's 100 cars, it's gonna be 3 million, and send it to town meeting and see how it goes. I mean, I don't see the downside to doing that. I know the interim, you're not going to get a parking garage tomorrow. It's going to be years from now. But I nobody has ever done it, as far as I know. No one's ever explored it. Nobody wants to pay for it. But just see if it's even possible. Because if it isn't, then I shut up, which makes lots of people happy. And it's just put to bed. And hopefully in the transition, if we moved everyone to the outer core, maybe we don't have the parking issue anymore. And then we don't have to do it. There's nothing saying that we have to. So it's just one of those, I think that we can go one direction, but just don't dismiss the fact that Reading is only going to increase in the amount of people, businesses, et cetera. And I think that it's still going to be potentially an issue. And a second level would eliminate that issue for I don't even know how many more years to come. But if it can't exist, then it can't exist, and it's a moot point. I don't see what the harm is to just looking into it, because as far as I know, nobody has. And that's all.
Just to be clear, Chris, you're specifically talking about, your proposal is to build some additional spaces in the CVS lot. Is
Correct.
that your,
yes, or dig down if, like I said, I never would have thought that because of the water table and all that stuff, but perhaps it's not an issue over there. I don't know. But I just think it's worth exploring the option, because if someone says we can't do it, then we can't do it. And nobody can ever ask us to do it ever again, because, you know, it's not feasible. But still, we need to have our plan going in regardless of that, of just making the regulations. And like I said, perhaps moving everyone to the outer core, you go to CVS and half the lots of Ghost Town are like 24 hours a day over there. And perhaps we solved it, and then we don't need a garage. So.
Yeah, I would agree that one thing that we talked about, or certainly I've tried to emphasize, is that what is this policy, or whatever our recommendations are, what does it look like in 5 years? And I think your point is that there's going to be more stress on parking unless the development plan includes like more on-site parking for customers of the businesses and so on and so forth. That's not something that we're talking about right now, but I think it's important to talk about it. But,
yeah, because if they do get that building approved next to CVS and that little dirt pathway that apparently is going to be this new building and whatnot, like the people over there are going to have somewhere to park, and they can't park under it, or whatever the status was for that. They're going to lose some spots, but like we're only going to be increasing the demand as much as, like I said, I'd love to think that everyone's just going to be riding a bike around and doing all that. I don't think that's Reading at this point. I don't think the data suggests it.
Yeah, well,
especially
certainly,
biking.
97.5% of the people said they drive. So I think you have to deal. So if that's what they're saying, then they have to put their car somewhere. So that's the
I do
parking issue.
think it would be a good idea to do that, conceptual design study to see if it's feasible, because that concept has been out there for too long. And you're right, Chris, it's never been, no one's ever been put pencil to paper, at 30, in general, right. The planning number for structured parking is about $30,000 a space. So for 100 spots, we're talking about, 3 million, and that 30,000 a space. The last time I did a study that looked at parking spaces was a good, at least 7 years ago. So, inflate that up some, maybe up to 40,000, 35, 40,000 a space now. But that's the ballpark we're talking about. And, there are grants available. Like maybe that's something that we can do. I think, though, however, that we need to have a good understanding of why the town would take that on. Like, what are we trying to do with those spaces, right? Is that for to support commercial businesses? Is that to support? Is that for overnight parking? Is that for visitor parking? Like why are we now requiring those spaces, and how do we expect those to be used? Because I think that, if we're talking about, $3 to $4 million of public funds going into something, we need to really have a good understanding of like, what's the anticipated need, not just sort of general need. And I think we can think about that and probably put together some thoughts, but I do just want to make sure that at least that we're aware, right? The developments that have been approved to date, right? Aside in the one there you're talking about next to the CVS parking lot, that aside, generally the commercial space is no larger than the commercial space that it was replacing. Is that fair to say, Julie? I think that's the case in almost every condition. So
Sorry, say it again.
The commercial spaces, that the commercial square footage that is being approved in the buildings in downtown are generally no bigger than the commercial spaces that were there previously. There may be some exceptions, like the commercial space for the Sunoco. How do you actually characterize how big that was? And right, that's sort of. But I guess the point that I'm trying to get at is that with all these developments going up, we aren't increasing dramatically the square footage of commercial space in downtown Reading. We are not, right? What we're doing is increasing the residential units. At 1.25, I think they generally have enough space. As Liz mentioned, what they don't have enough space for is visitor parking. They don't have necessarily enough space for drop-offs and deliveries. I know Sarah's brought that up, right? So some of those uses need to be accommodated probably better than they are now, or definitely better than they are now. But I'm not sure that those uses warrants a parking garage, right? Or at least I wouldn't want to pay tax dollars for visitors parking for that. I think we need to sort of understand what the demand is over and atop of the commercial projections, the commercial space and commercial space parking projections that we have. And I think that's what Karen was getting at in sort of her list of what are we really looking at the developments that are coming in, and what have we got, and where is that going? So I'm not criticizing Chris at all. I like the idea of getting an answer on the parking garage question, but I think we also need to think about like what would we really be accommodating, and who would actually be using that.
Yeah, I think, real quick, sorry, Sarah. I just think that it would, we already have an amazing downtown with the common and everything. I think it would just be a shot in the arm to just have more people coming to the downtown and utilizing it, because now there's more parking in that centralized spot that's down there. There's talks of farmers markets, et cetera, in the future, those kind of things. I just, for me, I know you said that the spots replace, et cetera, but using Fat Larry's, the business that's not open next to it, it's closed down, the old butcher shop or something, and then Empower, the tea place that's just opened over at Subway. There was already no parking up there to begin with. And now Fat Larry's, whenever they open, it's going to be harder for them. It's more quick stuff because that's only the 15-minute kind of scenario. So perhaps redoing some of the spots up there will help that. But it's more, I think there's a lot more that's going to be coming here and a lot more demand that we don't know about, because half the people in Reading think there's a parking issue downtown. The other half don't. So there's this meeting of people that don't come to downtown to do whatever because they think they're not going to find a spot. So by constructing, I've moved on from the garage. It's more of a second deck, so it's more aesthetically pleasing to
It's
town.
yeah, it costs the same. It costs
But
the same, doesn't it?
it's more of, now we don't know how many people aren't really coming downtown. It might be 50% of the people there. We might be turning away all of this other traffic that we didn't have before. But the town common is one of the bigger highlights of Reading, and having additional parking over there is going to be night and day, I think, for the businesses as well as the residents that just can come down for whatever events that could end up going down there, because there would be parking to be able to be used for it. The other thing I was going to mention real quick is that I'm blanking again. That's 2 in a row. Mark it down. I'll go to Sarah.
Sarah,
Okay,
you had
help
a
me out.
comment?
Yes, I was just gonna say, up in Newburyport, they have this parking garage that they worked a long time to get. And one of the, I was talking to somebody up there who's on the planning board, and they incorporated a lot of different uses into it, and they got different grants to help pay for it, to make it a transportation hub. So it's also where buses come. They have an electric car charging station. When it's the snow ban, a lot of the people that don't have enough places to park their car on the road, they'll park in the garage. When there's events down at the waterfront, they use the parking garage. And they made the facade of the garage look like a storefront with windows, and they put ads in there for the different arts things that are happening. It adds a lot to that downtown area on top of parking. Sort of gives people like a place to start from. So I would, to me, I know Jay had talked something about the cost, something about one of the videos that he sent us was showing like the vast use of parking and industrial parks and all that. But where that's a small space, and I don't know how much of that land is the town, putting a second level on it seems like it makes good sense to do something like that. I don't know if you would even be able to put some kind of like green space up there or something different, something like, I always want to call it, whatever it is they do at the convention center there where they have like swings and stuff. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways to make it have multiple uses, like not just the parking garage. And also, for instance, just over the years that I've lived here, many times when I'm trying to bring my mother, like to Easter church, or Tom's mother, when they were not very able-bodied, it was really hard to get somebody into the church and then, have somebody standing there with them, go run, find some parking spot, Anton's Cleaners or something like this, and then run back and get up to church and then do the same thing over when you had to leave. It would just be nice if there were some easier ways, and of course, Reading Community Singers, and we have our concerts there. It's really difficult because not all of the singers are very able-bodied to walk through ice and snow. And so we're actually carpooling from behind CVS in different places so that we can have our family members park closer. But if there were more spots and for the Christmas tree lighting, I brought friends to that. There's just a lot of magic, the Reading Street Fair, having the ability to almost like have like, oh, sorry, you know, it's almost like guest parking or event parking on a small scale. I mean, I feel like going forward for Reading, I know where everybody's trying to really work hard to, you know, bring it together and build the community, make it more walkable, make more arts right here. I think it would only help to have more parking. So,
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I've been noticing, trying to take pictures of different development sites and different suburban communities. I was in Plymouth last week, Melrose, Wakefield. I kind of go through there, and I noticed that, you know, Melrose, and I think Wakefield as well, Wakefield has that big parking garage near the train station. But Melrose, if you go to the restaurants, the restaurant scene in Melrose is very vibrant at night. And there's a lot of parking use that goes on, but they have a lot of lots behind the front facing buildings in Melrose. I mean, I don't know how many total spaces they have. It's a lot. And it seems to be way more than Reading has. So, I mean, if you were to say, I mean, I go to Turner's, I mean, I know Joe Turner and his family very well, the Turner restaurant. And, you know, so I go down there a little bit more, and I, so it just seems to me like, I mean, the thought, if I'm going to go to Turner's for, you know, to sit at the bar and have you know, I just don't think twice about it. I don't think twice too much about going to Reading either, but I just think that having that excess parking makes it more of a destination than, so I think the optionality of a garage of some kind, and Sarah, I love your idea that can we create multiple uses for such a space? I think that's a brilliant idea that could really, you know,
I'm just telling the story. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of creative people could do interesting things with such a proposal.
Well, I think that's how they got some of their grant money, if I remember, was because of making it a transportation hub.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I was thinking
Sarah.
the MBTA, you know, could the MBTA be interested in helping us build a garage where you have a floor dedicated during commuter hours to paid commuter parking, for instance? I mean,
Yeah, Sarah, that's exactly why I brought up the question about the use cases, because I've in my professional life, I've done a lot of planning and development for those multi-use transit centers. And so, you know, Bernie, you mentioned one down in Plymouth, worked on that, and worked in Wilmington, Beverly, and up in Amesbury. And there is a lot of money for those types of facilities, especially when you know, link in transit. But you also have to have sort of a reason for trying to get the public funding, town funding, right? Or you know, some grant funding on really what's the purpose, what need is it gonna function? And I thought that this group, as we, you know, think about the need, how that may fit into future needs, would be the group to identify. Yes, this is where a parking garage would fit into the future development of the town. So, you know, yeah, there is money out there, and if it is feasible, I mean, we shouldn't shy away from it, because, you know, I'm with all of you that, you know, there's, you know, having that excess parking could do wonders. There's no doubt. So.
Maybe you could even have a helicopter pad on the top.
yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Well, because I think they've used a playground at Joshua Eaton a couple of times for, like, you know, helicopters for like ambulances.
Well, it's not that far-fetched of a thing, maybe not a helicopter, but, you know, there are all the UAVs,
The drones.
that are carrying people. And so, you know, it's a real thing that's happening before you probably want to understand that it's happening. But if, you know, in the next couple of years, that will be real, and, you know, having a space for someplace in downtown where you could take a drone from, you know, wherever, you know, from Boston up to Reading and plop down
Wow.
You laugh, but it's real, right?
I'm
That's the kind
looking
of stuff
forward to it.
that's the kind of
Sign me
stuff
up.
Yeah.
we do need to be planning for, right?
Yeah.
So,
So should we send, John, should we all send you our thoughts about a garage and then you put the data together for why we could use a garage?
sure, I could do that. I'll do that if that's,
Okay.
yep. Since Karen took on the other one.
John, I have a question that hasn't been, so the question that has been asked, I think you weren't at one of the meetings maybe, is if you take all the parcels downtown and, there's an insatiable demand for those landowners to maximize the value of their property. Once one landowner converts it, every other landowner is going to want to do exactly the same thing unless it's constrained. The question for you is how much total square, additional space for residential and business what is the maximum potential that could be converted for what we have right now?
I thought, and I'm looking at Julie's square here. I thought that at one point that had been done and or that had been calculated, and I think it was when the downtown smart growth district first was created. So back before the Haven Street development, I think that's when that was done. And the whole thinking, and it does play out this way, is that a lot of the constraint on development, especially on the smaller parcels, is parking and circulation, right? Because a building has to be, in order to build enough parking to get 1.25 on the site, you can only, right? The parcel needs to be so big, and you have to be able to, to get in and out. And so there is, parking does restrict development downtown just because of the nature of the shape and layout of the parcel and the size of the parcels. But then there's also on top of that, right, a square footage number, just based on zoning that we have, which is bigger than what you'd actually be able to feasibly construct, if that makes sense.
Just for purposes of potentially thinking about garages or whatever, if you could find that and circulate it yourself or Julie to just kind of give us that, it's probably never going to happen, but I mean, that would be the maximum use case. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Julie, was that, I'm also thinking that when the last change to the downtown smart growth district was created, didn't we have to do that for DHCD?
Not exactly that, like a similar sort of analysis. We have to basically figure out how many units we think we could get at their minimum density requirement above what we have in terms of units now.
Oh, yeah, that's a different.
That's not exactly the same.
No, that's different. Yeah.
But if under our current zoning regulations, if every developer came in and maxed out to the dimensions that we've said that they can do, that's sort of the question. And then I'm just the reason I'm asking, and I keep asking, is I think in terms of our report to the select board, I think it would be remiss if we didn't say, here's where we are today. Here's the worst, here's the worst possible case for all the density in every, and that way you set that boundary, and here's where we are today, and here's what could happen. And then that's why, I think the select board may find it useful. Go ahead. Did you have something, Sarah?
I was just going to say, that's a good idea. It sort of takes like wondering out of the equation. Like, I think we might have this, I wonder what it would be. So yeah, makes sense.
I'm kind of feeling like we're getting to some sort of, not a conclusion, but, you know, I mean, it's almost 9 o'clock. I think it would be useful if we tried to wrap up and then maybe, did anybody else have other ideas or comments or other proposals with respect to bullet points on potential recommendations?
Did we have any public people on or?
I've been looking all night. I
Oh.
haven't seen anybody join, but I might,
Okay.
unless I'm missing something, Julie.
There were two people who were on briefly at different times. Like briefly, like a matter of minutes for each of them.
Oh.
Any suggestions on how we go forward? Shall we, maybe one question would be, what are the unintended consequences? Sarah, Karen, if you could circulate your bullet points, I can do the same through Andrew. Maybe we can ruminate on those over the next 2 weeks until our next meeting, and then perhaps circulate all the unintended consequences of the various policies and the pros and cons. And if we could just maybe come back and discuss those at our next meeting. I think we have, and if any other guest speakers that people suggest we might want to invite.
So are you doing one on just unintended consequences separate from Karen?
No, I think for all proposals,
Oh,
I was just thinking, so Karen, you'll summarize yours. I think I've got.
Well, I thought everyone was going to
bullet
send
points.
me something, and then
Yeah.
I was going to do a main sheet, and then I was going to share it through Andrew and Julie, and then we're going to talk about it next time. Unintended consequences, I think, would be after everybody gets all the compiled information. Right?
Well, yeah, I think we've talked a lot of it. You've mentioned your proposals, and, I put a few bullet points up. The question is, those are all valid. They're all valid suggestions. And all I'm trying to say is, can we sleep on it? Get the things out to everybody really, like not tomorrow or the next day, just so that we can all see the proposal.
I guess I'm confused because I thought Liz said that everyone was going to send me something. I was going to add it to my bullet points, and then I was going to distribute it out to everyone. So I can't give it to you tomorrow if everybody doesn't give me theirs tonight.
yeah.
I guess, yeah. So I guess the question is, do people have other proposals that they want to send along that we haven't discussed tonight?
Well, we still have some members of the committee that aren't even here.
Yeah.
So we need
Jay,
to give
yeah.
them an opportunity. Dan and Jay and
Right.
Liz has been, having issues. So I think we need to give them an opportunity to submit their ideas because they haven't been part of this discussion at all.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'm wanting, so I guess what I would expect to have back after we all send our proposals is that we'd have, like theoretically, each one of us would have a proposal, right? And then, so if we had, what is it, eight or nine different proposals, 1 through, let's say 9, you would consolidate those. Some of them would be very much overlapping.
Correct.
Right. And so that's what I was hoping that we would get back. And then we could, debate those or find common ground or and then also think of the unintended consequences of any of the various proposals.
So Karen, do you want to set a deadline for everybody to send you their suggestions?
Can we do it by Friday?
By all of you. So,
Is Jay on his honeymoon for 2 weeks, did he say?
he's gone for a while, I think.
Yeah.
We can always bring somebody in, if he
Okay.
wants to send something in later. He may be picking up his emails anyway.
Okay.
So if he can.
Friday.
So
send
actually,
something
I
in.
guess Julie and Andrew, will you send something out reiterating what we're looking for? And I don't know, do you put my email address in there? Is that allowed? I don't
Or
know.
send it back to you, Julie, and then you,
And you
send it
send it
back
to
to-
me?
Karen.
Sure.
So basically,
I'll
you're
figure it
gonna
out.
Okay.
cut and
Thank
paste,
you.
cut and paste everybody's proposals label them in some way, and then maybe organize them in such a way that there may be some common ground between various proposals, and
Mhm.
then we
Yep,
can,
yep.
after we read them, think about them, talk to people, and maybe figure out what could go wrong. And then maybe plan for the future. What are the options that we need to keep open for the future?
Just don't reply back and say, oh, thanks, John, great idea. Chris and Sarah had the same idea. Like, just,
Yeah, I won't reply back.
Yeah.
I'm only chatting with Julie and Andrew.
We've been pretty good about that, I think. So hopefully we stay in between the lines. Anything else, any other business that people think we need to talk about, or agenda items? Julie?
So I think your conversations are great. I appreciate this dialogue a lot. It's really helpful for me to hear all these things from you guys. I did want to, I don't know exactly what your time frame is going forward. I did hear that you're talking about potentially a community forum on November 10th. And I do want to make sure if you're getting close to putting something together that we not have some of the same pitfalls that staff had with our effort. And so one of the major, I think, flaws of our effort was that we didn't give specific and actual notice to every single resident within the downtown where there are parking regulations. So just something to think about for when we do outreach for your community meeting or your future discussions where you're getting into regulation changes. Make sure to do that, to deliver a notice to every home and every business and every, within the downtown. So that's just one thing to think about. Then I guess just in terms of planning for November 10th, it's already October, what is today, the 13th? And then your next meeting is October 27th. So, and I don't know how much you discussed it last time, but have you given any thought to format? I think the venue is proposed to be Zoom only. It is the week of subsequent town meeting. It's a tricky week. There's going to be a lot of tired people. But Zoom, I think Zoom has worked great for other things we've done. I'm personally a fan of Zoom only. I think trying to do hybrid for big community meetings could be really, but that facilitation, ideas, any resources you need from staff, an outreach plan. We're here to help you be successful. So, but the sooner we know what you need from us, the better. We have a lot of other competing priorities. This is a very, very busy time of year for us.
Yeah, I think the idea was that we discussed our timeline was to discuss initial proposals today, which we sort of have done. Next week, try to formulate those into some kind of coherent set of recommendations, and then distribute those as widely as possible so that we could have a community meeting on that 13th of November and hopefully get feedback. And I think we have a lot of emails for people who filled out the survey. I don't know how we deal with the telephone numbers, but our idea was that we would blast out to everybody again our proposals after the October 27th meeting to say, okay, everybody, here are our proposals. What do you think? And then get that sort of feedback. That now how we get it out to everybody. I mean, we've got their email addresses. We have a lot of them. We can do paper deliveries. I think we've talked about maybe getting, yeah, go ahead, Karen.
So I know I handed out at least 100 flyers around where I live. And I noticed that a lot of the newer responses were from those areas because they're all dated. I'm going to need more than a few days in order to duplicate those efforts because I didn't get everything accomplished on this side of town, you know, between Sanborn and however far down I go and Woburn Street. And I'm going to need more than a couple days. And I think people that live there are going to need more than a couple days because they're going to want to see what the plan is and they may want to talk to people about it first. And so I guess what I want to find out is I would much rather hand out a postcard directing them to some place that has our proposals because I'm not sure you can fit on a postcard what our proposals are for them to understand. So maybe if we could have a link to the website that will take them to what it is, as opposed to trying to say, here's all the stuff and kind of give them a chance to go look at it and then figure out how to contact us and tell them about the forum that we're going to do. So that's just my request, that it takes a long time to go door to door. There's a lot of doors.
I mean, Julie, we have these so-called people who in lieu of taxes or something, or for credit against their taxes, do some work for the town. I know that was discussed at some of our meetings. What's the status of using those people?
I don't know if the program's happening yet. It's the tax worker program. It's a lot of vulnerable population. I haven't seen them around town hall. That doesn't mean it's not happening. But I can look into that. I should have mentioned earlier, and I will just mention it now. And I don't know how it may or may not impact your time frame for this effort, but we have a postcard. We have a printing company printing a postcard mailing to all households in Reading, including rental households, with a QR code for the park survey, as well as a QR code for the Your Downtown survey, which is about the downtown.
Wow.
Which I just authorized today. I was actually hoping it would go out last week, but the printing company has a little backlog because it's election season. So they've given me an estimated date of like early to mid next week to get that mailing out. So you hopefully will be getting a lot more responses to your survey.
Oh, that'd be great. That
May
would be awesome.
throw everything out of whack or corroborate everything you've already heard, but we just thought, well, we're already printing this postcard. Let's make two surveys on it. But anyway, so that's happening. So people who maybe weren't familiar will QR code, or they can go to the link and then they'll see the website where there's already a lot of information. So I like Karen's idea of having everything on the website and then letting people know of the link they can look at to become more informed. It would be like muscle memory for some people. And we can help with a specific and actual notification to impacted households downtown when the time comes.
Okay.
We can help with that. We do those kind of mailings a lot, and we can figure out ways to try to make sure we capture everybody.
Okay, great.
Yeah, basically, so Julie, I mean, basically, we don't want to make the same mistake twice. Right? That's what you're saying.
Right. No, I don't want to. We don't want to do that.
We do as much as we can, even if it takes another couple of weeks, and we've banged on everybody's door so loudly that they can't possibly ignore us. And if they don't respond, well, but partly too, it could be just the nature of our proposals may or may not evoke, more response for whatever that is, whatever that might be. Did you have something, Sarah?
I just wanted to say, I have decided to opt out of Reading Community Singers this session. So my Tuesdays are now open. So if you need to do any Tuesday meetings, yeah. And I also didn't know if, John, if you were on when Bernie showed the map, the Google map of the location of where all the surveys. Okay.
I did, yeah, which was great. I mean,
Yeah.
It looks like we covered town, so that's great.
All right, 9:15. Any other comments, questions, suggestions? Chris?
Thanks, Bernie. So for clarification, it is November 10th for the community forum, correct? That's what we said the last meeting, I believe. That's what I wrote down, so
It's a Wednesday, that's a Wednesday night.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know,
It's-
I think the 10th, the 12th, and 13th have all been mentioned, so I just want to make sure that it's 100% the 10th, and we're clear on that. So it's a Wednesday.
So we're sending Karen
That's what
all
I
of
have.
our, oh, sorry.
That's what I have on my calendar, Chris.
Okay,
So we're sending Karen all of our thoughts about parking, and we're sending John our thoughts about in support of a parking garage. And Bernie, you don't want us to send you unintended consequences?
No, I think, well, I mean, certainly I think when we get stuff from Karen, I think it's, the idea was that just to sleep on it, brainstorm, see into your crystal ball, what could possibly go wrong with, proposals A, B, C, D, or E, whatever they might be.
Okay, so that's next meeting.
Yeah, and I mean, look, if you want to send those comments back to Julie and Andrew, absolutely, we should do that. That way we have a little bit more time to think about them before we meet next.
Okay.
The next meeting is also Zoom only. There's no room available. And we were gonna have Chris Cole, Assistant DPW Director, and Ryan Percival, Town Engineer, available if you had any specific questions. Some of the things you've talked about, like the survey comments about people would walk, but they don't feel like the connections are quite there, or like it's not safe enough, or like the liability things Chris has mentioned about having employees parking in the outer core, and like snow and the ice and broken up sidewalks and stuff like that. That's all kind of their wheelhouse. I may or may not also be at that meeting, but just if you wanted to think of any questions that have come up over the course of the last couple of months that they could really help you get some clarity on, we'll be there.
Julie, you broke up a little bit. I didn't
Sorry.
quite hear Chris's last name and his responsibility.
Chris Cole, he's Assistant DPW Director.
Got it. Thank you. So we'll put him on the agenda. Those two people will be on the agenda for October 27th.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks.
And they helped me with a lot of the work that the staff ever, they're on the Parking Traffic Transportation Task Force. And they also helped with like the inventory of like additional parking spaces that we could add to the downtown. So I don't know if Karen, you used that when you were like comparing the numbers and trying to figure out what's actual, and but they did prepare that inventory, and they did use fairly conservative metrics when they did it, like assuming everyone drives a Hummer and doesn't know how to park, and keeping distances from intersections, and obviously fire hydrants, and making sure that there's enough width for fire trucks to get through. So, some roads maybe only have one side instead of two sides. So their data, I think, is a lot more realistic than some of the information that was provided by the consultant study. Like the consultant overestimated in a lot of cases, like where we could add parking or what would be considered like a parking space downtown. So they have done a lot of work for this effort. So they hopefully will be able to give you some more insight if you had any questions.
Okay.
One thing that also might be useful, when I was looking at Wakefield the other day, they have diagonal parking along Main Street, which may alleviate some of the concern with people trying to parallel park. I mean, I don't know if I would be interested in their opinions on those issues, parallel versus diagonal.
They can totally like geek out on that with
They
you.
definitely, yeah, I was going to say they definitely have opinions on that.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments, or do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a
Motion to
motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
I'll
We have a
second. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
yes.
Aye.
Thanks,
And
everybody. Very
everybody-
productive meeting. And Julie, I guess or Caitlin, I guess that's 9:30. 19 or something like that.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Okay, cheers, everybody. Have a
Thank you.
good week.
Thanks.